Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We appreciate your interest in your county government and your time. I was going to ask if our deputy would close the door because it seems to be some noise out there that's giving us a hard time. Anyone who would like to have an agenda to follow along with us tonight, they're on the table and just to the right, that's just to the right outside the doors. And if you're watching us remotely, you can get a copy of the agenda on our website, Athens-ClarkeCounty.com. If you've got a cell phone with you tonight or any other device, please turn it off or to silent. There'll be 4 opportunities for citizen input tonight. The first is on our consent agenda, items 1 through 10, then old and new business, items 11 through 17. Is that right, Jen? Yes. And then the third opportunity will be for recommendations from our Planning Commission. Then items 18, 19, excuse me, I got it all backwards. 18 and 19 are the recommendations from Planning Commission. There'll be one final opportunity at the end of our meeting for any item that's not on tonight's agenda, and any citizen will have an opportunity to address us for 3 minutes at the end of the meeting. The rules of the commission allow that 3 minutes. There's the timer on Ms. Spratlin's desk will turn yellow at 2.5 minutes to let you know you've got 30 seconds left, so please try to have your remarks finished by that time. And if you brought handouts tonight, if you give them to Mr. Berryman, he'll make sure that I and all the commissioners get them. And before we start tonight's meeting, I'm going to request that we all share a moment of silence to reflect on the tragedies that we've witnessed recently with 3 back-to-back hurricanes, the rebuilding of the lives that are going on in Houston, the devastation in Puerto Rico, and most recently, the unthinkable act of inhumanity in Las Vegas. 50 lives lost and close to 500 people that are injured, and we're not sure what their status is going to be. And while we think of and/or pray, whichever you do, the victims of these tragedies, we should all also give thanks for the blessings that we enjoy here in Athens every day. So please, if you'd bow your heads with me for a few minutes. Thank you. Now that we've had that somber moment, we're going to get to have a nice moment. We've got 2 awards for our solid waste department. Would Charles Bush and Joe Dunlap please come forward? Are you going to take photos? Okay, great. On August 23rd, employees of the Solid Waste Department traveled to Columbus, Georgia, after being nominated by the Athens Downtown Development Authority to receive the Downtown Excellence Award for Georgia Downtown Association. The ADDA nominated the department for their strategic program that maintains a safe and positive physical appearance and atmosphere that is essential for economic development in the Central Business District. That's one of the toughest jobs that your department has, and y'all do a very good job of it. I'm really amazed when I come down here on a Monday after a football game, and everything's all nice and clean looking. So. Now, which is Charles? Charles, thank you for your work, and thank you to the department. Let's take this off because you can't make it pretty. Thank you, Charles. Thank you. And the second one is on September 19th, the Center for Hard to Recycle Material. Don't leave yet. Y'all have another one. Okay. On September 19th, the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, which we refer to as CHARM, located 1005 College Avenue, received the Spirit of Green Innovation Award from the Georgia Recycling Coalition for the successful first year of our CHARM operation during 2017. And Joe will accept this one. Thank you, Joe. You guys all know how to. Yeah, well. And I wish Mr. Homer Wilson was down here too, because at the same time that the ADDA recommended our Solid Waste Department for an award, they also nominated Homer Wilson for the Business Person Award for Downtown, Business Person of the Year, and Homer Wilson got that award. So I will probably invite him to come down here and see us next month. So thank you guys very much. And now, Ms. Spratlin, would you mind calling the roll for us?
Jefferson.
Here.
Here. Lane.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Bailey.
Present.
Neesmith.
Present.
Bell.
Here.
Harris.
Present.
Howard.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any written communications? Okay. This is the time that if any citizen would like to speak to us for,
For the minute.
oh, I'm sorry. Miss something. Do I have approval for the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we have citizen input for any of the items that are 1 through 10 that are on our consent agenda. So if anyone would like to speak to those, please come to the podium and let us know which item you're addressing and give us your name and address. Anyone want to speak to items 1 through 10? Okay, we'll come behind the podium. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Got ordinance?
Mr. Behrman.
First is an ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to drought and water shortage management plan, DWSMP, and for other purposes. The next is an ordinance to amend the FY 2018 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide grant funding, if awarded, from the Federal Justice Assistance Grant Program for tactical supplies and for other purposes. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will now move on to old business, and we don't have any new business on our agenda tonight, but anyone who would like to address 11 through 17, this is the time to come to the podium to address any of those items. Anyone wish to speak to any of those? Okay, seeing none, we'll come back behind the rail, and we'll start with item number 11. Ms. Link.
I removed this from the consent agenda just because I wanted to make sure the folks on Glen Haven Avenue were aware of it. They are, the folks who alerted me to the issue there. I've heard from them, and I'm happy to move that we adopt this parking item.
Yes, ma'am. Have a motion, second, Mr. Gertz. Mr. Behrman.
Did you read that ordinance? An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to partial removal of parking restrictions on Glen Haven Avenue and for other purposes.
Okay, we have a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the next item is the award of Lexington Road and Atlanta Highway Corridor Studies. Would any of our commissioners like to have any discussion on that? Mr. Neesmith?
Yes, Sharon will join in, I'm sure. We met with the mayor and management about this, and you'll see on item number 13, 12, under history, item 12 and 13, we voted to hold it, and then on the 20th of September, Sharon and I met with, I think Mike was there too, wasn't he? Yes.
I believe he was, yeah.
With management, and Mr.
Mr.
Commissioner Hamby Harrod was there as well. It said, oh, the two corridor committees, not two commissioners. Okay, yes. So we were representing the corridor committees, and we talked about the fact that there was $100,000 that we'd set aside in the budget sometime back, and we wanted to see what was going to happen with that. And this ordinance does discuss that. And I think we discovered that that has to be used for downtown. Is that not correct?
No.
Now help me with that.
No, so the purpose of putting in there, back in FY16, we had approved $100,000. And
Right.
we ended up finding monies that were left over in another capital project that were more than that. And so that money was set aside, but it was the corridor committees. I know Andy and I at least were working for over a year trying to use some of that money to do small things along the corridor, and we just wanted to memorialize that in the agenda,
Right.
which I think management has done
Right.
by showing that that money was already earmarked for that purpose, and so that's why you see in the revenues the 100,000 dedicated, and then the rest of the money is the balance that's available, and that's why we're having to go into contingency, because we don't have enough to do the what we think the project's going to cost.
Right. So we're going to have some opportunities to do some beautification at the very least, and then on the Atlanta Highway, we're thinking about putting up a new entrance sign, which we lost some years ago for some unknown reason. So the Athens West Corridor Group is going to be working on the design of that sign so we can come up with some pricing and so forth. So I move that we accept this agenda item.
A second.
Have a motion, second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 13 is the rehabilitation and replacement of some water lines. And this is some very technical things. Anybody want to talk about that?
Make a motion that we accept it.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the next one is rehabilitation and replacement of sanitary sewers. Anybody like to discuss sewers tonight?
I think if we didn't want to talk about water lines, we don't want to talk about sewer lines.
I kind of thought that.
Move for the approval of the recommendation.
A second.
Have a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're moving along. Number 15 is fire engine and ladder truck purchase. And I believe this went through your committee, Ms. Terry?
Not that I remember, but
No, I don't know
can't
why.
remember what I did last week.
Huh? We're waiting on the bids, okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah, the bids, yeah. Madam Mayor, I move for adoption of the recommendation of option A, B, C.
Second.
Have a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't know why I thought you were in charge of that, Ms. Terry. Maybe I thought you should be.
Well, maybe I should, I don't know.
And the next item is the execution of a memorandum of understanding with Mobilite. And this is the small cell technology we've been discussing. Would anybody like to speak to that? Mr. Neesmith?
Some of our visitors from our work session where we discussed this responded to my request for some more information pretty effectively about the technology, and then I saw something where you, Lane, you're looking further into the ability to do help with rural and suburban coverage, which is still up in the air, really. We don't know quite what their capabilities are going to be or what their plans are for that, but it has the potential to serve some parts around the small cell towers when they're installed.
I think Bill and I can share some further information with that. Y'all had requested that we explore that, and we've had back and forth over email and had a conference call with the representative from Mobility, and she had done a good bit of work to see what was possible. And so they represent a carrier that has a couple of initiatives right now where they're providing devices for certain parts of the community to try to, get, it's there's some free programs they have and some free equipment. And what we determined today, and Bill, you fill in the holes, is that they can install some small cell equipment out in the rural area, and it has about a mile radius that it can throw, and it can enhance ability. And taking their other two initiatives with some free equipment for some of the residents, that they could actually achieve the ends of what you'd like to see. And what we talked about today was finding several pilot sites to do that, to try that out. The question of where we can get the most value for placing those. So if there's some neighborhoods in the rural areas that have signal issues, we could try to determine those and do some pilot sites. But not only were they very open to it, but they had brought some ideas to the table. And Bill, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think the only thing that Ms. Crawford from Mobility explained to us, that if you get out in the rural areas, there are fewer opportunities to co-locate on existing other utility poles, and so it may well mean they have to install their own poles, plus they can get higher up on the pole to get better range.
So, Madam Mayor, if I might conclude, this is leading edge technology. This is the start. They're still going to be implementing 3G and 4G. 5G is over the horizon, which is going to be a big deal. And then it needs to be engineered for whatever the particular area's needs are, and that's the kind of stuff we're talking here.
Right.
So I'll move for option 1 to approve this.
Sounds like some good news coming. So, Ms. Dickerson?
I just had some more discussion. If somebody wanted to second, that's fine.
Yeah,
I just wanted
second for, you want to second it for discussion?
Sure, I'll second, but I have some questions, though, before we get too far into voting. But, so I'd asked the manager, and doing just a little bit of research, it looks like the going rate for these, this lease agreement is anywhere from $100 to $500 per pole per month. and we're at $13.50 per year per site or per pole, which is on the low end. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, we have a captive critical mass audience here in Clarke County. Seems like we might have, you know, especially where they're talking about having these, we might get a better rate than that. So what's the, how do we understand how that was negotiated?
So, we were approached by these companies some time ago, and they were approaching cities all over Georgia. And so what you ran the risk of is that cities would have different agreements, different thresholds. And so the Georgia Municipal Association stepped in to say, look, to help both the companies and the cities, let's negotiate one model document. And Bill was instrumental in working on that. The consultants for GMA were the ones that negotiated those rates. And they are somewhat on the lower end, but there is an interest here to have the two parties voluntarily have an agreement to govern what happens here. There is some uncertainty or some disagreement about what the rights of these companies that they have. Some assert that they are actually utilities and may not need any permissions whatsoever. I know the FCC is looking at this. I suspect that there's discussions going on at the legislature about this. And we just want to be able to get an agreement that makes sense between the two parties. And I won't call it an incentive, but I guess GMA had a lower rate just to try to get the folks to the table. And Bill, I don't know, would you characterize that any differently?
And I think just a little bit of an expansion on that is that this agreement has been negotiated to stress co-location with an incentive to co-locate on existing poles rather than have new poles established. So I think that was one of the concessions in the compensation amount.
I guess I don't see that as a concession so much. If they have to install a pole, it's gonna cost them money versus using ours. But I guess the other question I had too was understanding that the term of the agreement is 25 years. And I just want to understand a little bit better why so long, especially when, you know, data is changing like rapidly, extremely rapidly. Why would we want to lock ourselves into something that's 25 years?
I think the model for that is the typical franchise agreements that cities have with Georgia Power and other people like that. Those are long-term agreements. So I think that was what was underlying that.
And I guess my thought would be is that that kind of equipment at Georgia Power level would be more expensive than the kind of equipment they're putting in. I mean, the lifespan of this equipment probably is maybe 3 to 5 years. So it's not like, I mean, the lines typically aren't, my assumption would be, and I'm certainly making this assumption, not being a technician, but that this equipment's gonna, you know, just like computers, they're gonna have to replace this stuff sooner than later versus where you're putting in lines that are gonna last 15, 20 years unless there's, you know, the fiber and the kind of things that the electric companies put in. So just a little concerned about the length.
Can I address that?
Yeah, please.
This is a lease for the space, so they will swap out the equipment and the software as technology requires or gives them the opportunity. So this 25 years is a lease for that place on that pole.
Okay.
So it's not locking us into a technology at all.
Okay, so is that in our agreement?
It is for the right to come in and apply for permits, individual permits, which have to go through the location analysis that's in here, plus all the technical requirements and inspections that Transportation and Public Works would do. So they're individual, this is not a blanket. There will be an individual permit process for each one of these facilities. And they may come and go. They may well say, we don't need this permit anymore, we need to go somewhere else. And I think they expect that.
Okay, well, and that makes sense. The only other question I had was that the annual license fee and the rental fees are essentially 10 years out too. So would we want to, I mean, do we want to lock ourselves into 10 years before we're able to renegotiate the fees for these, or?
I think that's a business decision for the mayor and commission. I mean, this is, basically, we've taken the GMA negotiated agreement. We did add a good many technical issues, thanks to Drew and his team, to tailor it to the specifics of Athens-Clarke County, but the term and the fees and all that sort of thing were part of GMA's negotiation.
And what's our opt-out clause? I mean, for some reason down the road, we decided we want out of this. Can we get out of it, or?
No, it's like a franchise agreement with one of the bigger utilities.
The only other thing I guess I'll point out in the agenda report is that there's a section, I think it's 7E, and it says, the agreement says an escalation of 3%, but what's in the agenda report is $35, which is not 3% of $13.50.
The $35 is a mistake,
Okay,
because the escalation would compound each year.
Okay.
Right? Yeah,
I just want to make sure.
thank you for pointing that out.
Anything further? Further discussion? Mr. Harrod?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some questions as well, and so I'm going to go through the pages in the PDF. I'll just mention the pages on the PDF. So on page 152, it says, under 7B, it says co-location of small cell communication facilities on existing electrical and/or telephone facilities is required whenever technically feasible. Who determines when something is or is not technically feasible? The company or some independent third party?
The company is going to have to provide information to our Transportation and Public Works Department. And the Transportation and Public Works Department would have the opportunity to consult either with their own, using their own engineering expertise, or with the GMA consultant who's on call with Athens-Clarke County to just talk about the technical issues.
Okay, so we do have an opportunity to trust but verify, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then it says mobility has no right to cut or trim any ACC-UG unified government trees. What about private trees that may be next to the right-of-way and their branches grow over onto the right-of-way? Do they have the right to trim those?
I would argue that even if a branch goes over into our right-of-way, that branch, once it's on the right-of-way, is an Athens-Clarke County tree.
Okay, even though the roots are on somebody's private property? Okay. And then obviously, this is a GMA model language, but everywhere throughout the contract, it talks about the unified government as herein designated as city, and obviously we're a consolidated county. Does that make any difference legally?
No, that was just the term of reference
Okay.
that was used.
Then page 155, it says that it's talking about access to the right-of-way 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, provided, however, if lane closure is involved, subject to approved permit or work restrictions due to holidays and storm emergencies. What about other types of emergencies? Why is it restricted to holidays and storm emergencies?
I'd have to ask Drew about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. He went through this with a fine-tooth comb, and that didn't give him any heartburn.
Okay, well, I went through it with a finer tooth comb.
Bill, if we just use those as examples rather than absolutes, that might solve that. The lane closures, for example, just to give examples of what would close lanes.
I just want to make sure that if there's another kind of emergency, and I don't know what it might be, but there might be something, that we're not just locked into it being an ice storm or
Okay.
something. On page 157, it talks about termination of the agreement, the extension of the agreement. It says that the agreement can be extended for 4 additional 5-year terms unless terminated by mobility via written notice. Is there somewhere in here where we also have the same ability to terminate? Or are they the only ones that have the ability to terminate?
Hang on. The government does not have the ability to terminate.
Do we know why?
That's just typical of the franchise. If say, Georgia Power comes in and puts in a pole, they want to be in a position, and we see it even today. We've got where the government has to pay for money to move a pole. They're making that capital investment. They want to know they can be there. So that's part of it.
Okay.
And, again, this is an effort to try to, rather than have the state tell us how to do it, negotiate this. So this is.
No, I understand that, and I'm all in favor of that. I just want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's. So on page 158 of the PDF, under number 7, about 3, 6, 9, about 11 lines up, it says, in the event that, and then it gives 1 option, 2 option, and then it says a 3rd option. So it says, in the event that 1, 2, and it says and 3. Should that be an and, or should that be an and or?
Such.
Well, leaving it "and" is more favorable to the government.
Okay, well, we'll leave it as and then. And then I got 2 others, and then I'll be done. So a little, about 3 lines further on, it talks about notice of mobility's exercise of its rights to terminate shall be given to the city in accordance with the notice provisions set forth in paragraph 16 and shall be effective upon the mailing of such notice by mobility. Don't we want to say it's effective upon our receipt of such notice?
Generally, in contracts, and I certainly do this, if I want to make sure that the notice is done and it's counted on days, I'm in control of when it's mailed. I'm not in control of when it's received.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, contracts have the mailing date as the measuring date for days.
Okay.
And that way, you can go to the post office and get a receipt and know when it was mailed. So
Okay.
you're in control of that.
So the final one is on page 161 under number 15, where it talks about assignment and I guess survivorship of the company. So it says this agreement and each permit under it may be sold, assigned, or transferred by mobility without any approval or consent of the city to any parent, subsidiary, affiliate, or any person, firm, or corporation that shall control, be under the control of, or be under common control with mobility, or to any entity into which mobility may be merged or consolidated, or which purchases substantially all of the assets of mobility that are subject to this agreement. Is that pretty standard in these kinds of contracts? That
Yes.
okay. So-
Nowadays, it is with all the software contracts, all the technology contracts have just that kind of language in there.
So if they were to sell out to, just for the sake of argument, a Russian tech company, we don't have any say over that, over their continued ability to use this technology in our community?
That's correct.
Okay. Finally, page 162, under 19, under environmental, it says, it's talking about the company being subject to environmental law, and it gives 2 federal laws as an example, and it says federal, a little bit later on, federal or state laws. What about some of our local environmental regulations? Are they subject to those as well?
These are, sorry.
Well, let me just offer this up. All of these, this is to give them the opportunity to present plans to obtain a permit to do this. And in going through the permitting process, all of our, the codes of ordinances are, on the table. And changes are suggested to come into compliance with our codes and regulations.
I understand that. It's just in this contract, it lists only federal and state laws, and I just wanted to make sure that our local environmental laws were also need to be followed.
And this one is even though it's labeled environmental, is really just about neither party is going to deposit hazardous substances on or near the facility. And I think where that comes from is the old transformers that had the hazardous chemical in it that caused birth defects years ago. And I think it's not broader environmental, it's more about specific hazardous materials that could be placed on or around the facility. So I'm comfortable with that because local governments don't really regulate in that area. That's pretty much a federal and state preemption area.
Well, I've got 2 things in response. Reading a little bit further, this agreement sort of are the parameters for how we're going to interact. as far as other emergencies, ultimately, the approved right-of-way encroachment permit will cover us for other emergencies. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is we pursue this idea of, partnering with these companies to enhance signal out in the rural area. Remember that the equipment we're talking about is specific to one carrier. So if we put that carrier out there, only those folks that are using that carrier are going to benefit from it. So just know that. But this could be a good precedent that we pursue with all the carriers.
Ms. Dickerson?
Yeah, so specific to what Manager Williams just said, how exactly are we going to, in our option, capture what they're willing to do in the rural areas?
We're not, this would take, Bill and I talked about it, it's going to take several months to figure that out. I understand the wanting to use the leverage that we have now. They seem willing. They came forth with some good ideas and they gave us programs that we were instantly able to check and see that they are viable. So, I mean, you could try to craft some language, but to put something binding in there when we don't even have a definition of what it is we're going to try to do would be difficult.
I just wonder if we should add, with the intent that they operate in good faith to help us work on these things, just so we're holding, so that there's some, that, because they're offering this verbally, we don't have it in, the authorization, the approval that we're doing tonight, but we're taking their word that they're gonna help us on it, but once we sign the papers, maybe they won't. I mean, especially if we're stuck for a 25-year term, so, I mean, I wanna trust them and I wanna do this, but, I just wonder, I mean, in the past, we haven't been very specific and maybe things haven't worked out, so I just wonder if it's something we should pursue or not. I'm interested in what my colleagues think.
I'd be interested in what Mr. Berryman thinks too. You think that's a responsible thing for us to do, and can you craft that language for us?
The difficulty here is that Mobility is not the provider. And so it has to, it depends on whatever Sprint or I think T-Mobile would be willing to do. So that's a big limitation that we have with doing that.
Madam Mayor, I have the same problem. In fact, I may withdraw my motion with them providing what we need in our urban areas for the underserved neighborhoods that we have. And I'm just wondering if we could have them back again for some kind of conversation about this to see what they might be willing to do. Mr. Manager, is that something we can do?
Well, of course, I mean, that's an option that you have, is to delay approving the agreement. I mean, they've satisfied all the other criteria, and again, this agreement's based on the model that GMA negotiated on a statewide basis.
Yeah.
That's just,
Mr. Williams, can you tell us who will be affected by this, by delay? What would the effect of that be, and who?
well, I mean, it'd delay the company from moving forward with its plans to install the technology.
Well, that I understand, but is it going to create some problems for the users downtown that are not going to get there?
I wouldn't have that knowledge.
I think that's what we're struggling with here. We're dealing with brand-new technology that none of us really understand.
It is.
Ms. Terry?
I mean, I think in general terms, I'm very supportive of this, and so I don't want to give the impression that I'm not, but, and I think we're probably 98% of the way there, but I think just to hold it for a month until some of these final little nitpicky things could be figured out, there might be some wisdom in that.
We could have a withdrawal motion or a substitute, if that's y'all's will.
I'll withdraw my motion if my second will agree.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I wanted to get additional clarification, because I thought it was apples and oranges, that what is here right now is to enhance where the current service is with these.
What's my understanding?
And then it would be another conversation about another approach, that this approach isn't necessarily for the rural service gap that we have. Am I missing something?
Yeah.
That was my understanding too, but.
So, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is it's like, let's get this so that it's enhancing the current Sprint, T-Mobile people and the technology that they have now that they can improve it. And then use this relationship or partnership that we're in to find out what we can do to enhance it in the rural area. Or not even just enhance, it's actually provide, at this, from what I'm hearing. This is enhancing where it currently is with current technology, and then the other would be getting it where we don't have it. Is that accurate?
Yes, that was the reason for my question about who's going to be affected by it. It's going to be the current users downtown that are not going to have that enhancement. But it's probably not going to make our staff very happy. This is one of probably 3 more contracts that this will be the first that we'll build off of for our model. So if there are any questions about it that we want to get fixed, I think now's the time to fix them. So.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I don't think delaying it 30 days for the purpose of getting some more clarification, including the confusion that Commissioner Wright has, or the clarification she has, right, whichever that is, would hurt anything. So I will withdraw my motion.
Yeah.
And I'll make another motion that we table for 30 days and hope
Second.
that we can meet with the vendor.
We have a motion, second to table for 30 days. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll look at that. We'll look at that next meeting. Okay, now we go to number 17, which is the amendment to the alcoholic beverage ordinance to accommodate New Year's Eve falling on Sunday.
This is a much more pleasant topic to talk about. So there's a
At least we
commission,
understand
it's
it.
alcohol. So on page 167 in our packet is the commission defined option that came out from our discussion at the agenda meeting. So for those in the audience, one Sunday a year, bars can be open. And this New Year's Eve is a Sunday, so that has been determined by already in ordinance. And that this is allowing the Monday after the Sunday that's picked to be, the facility to be open from midnight to 2:30 in the morning on the following Monday. So it's not specific for this year, but so that next year for 2018, whatever Sunday is picked, then we don't have to go back to it. Does that make sense? Kelly, did describe that?
I think that's good.
And so-
Whether it's St. Patty's Day or Super Bowl Sunday, whichever of those is selected by the commission on an annual basis, you'll be able to continue drinking after the clock strikes midnight. You won't turn into a pumpkin. It's going to be a good time.
There you go. So I make a motion that we approve the commission defined option and the ordinance.
I'll
as,
second.
Bill put it together.
I'll
Have a motion,
second, but
second. And we have an ordinance read, but I will clarify something else we got quite a few people here, and I bet a lot of them would like for us to do this for every Sunday, but this is controlled by state law, so there was enabling legislation that allowed us to do this specific thing, and it's all we can do right now, Mr. Behrman.
before we vote, Madam Mayor, I
Yes.
think it's also important to point out that the liquor license holders are voting as they get their new
They
permits this
decide
year
each year.
about what Sunday they would like to be open next year. And then we will, by resolution, rather than by a new ordinance, designate the Sunday that we like.
Mr. Behrman, would you read the ordinance for us?
An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to alcoholic beverages and for other purposes.
Okay, we have motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We're all in agreement on everything tonight. Nice. And now we'll go to our public hearing and deliberation on recommendations from the Athens Planning Department. We only have 2, but we do those one at a time. So we would, rather than having public input on both of them. So we'll go to item number 18, which is a request of Lawrence and Yongi Mull for rezoning of some property that's commercial general with condition. And it's known as 291, 293, and 299 Firefighter Court, and the proposed use is a single-family dwelling. And this is property that was zoned commercial that we're allowing to go to single-family residential. Would anyone like to speak to that?
I have a quick question.
Wait,
Commissioner.
this is public comment.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
That's all right.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Lawrence Mull, the owners of the 3 properties, and I just got up here to answer any questions anybody might have.
Anybody have any questions that you'd like to ask Mr. Mull? Mr. Mull, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very-
Maybe?
And this is in Mr. Bailey's district. Would you like to address this?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I met with Mr. Mull and
Then we'll come to you.
looked at the plans, and they're retiring here They're part of the movement of people who've decided that Athens is a great place to retire. This property happens to be in an area that is already a neighborhood. The property was zoned commercial years ago because it's right along a commercial area, but it makes sense for it to be rezoned as residential property so it can become part of the neighborhood, and the surrounding property is residential. I don't see any issue with that. I think that that's a good use for the land. And they're combining 3 lots because a couple of the lots have some issues with topography and some utilities that are there, sewer line. And they're just building 1 house on 3 lots. I wish I could afford to do that, have a little more land. But I looked at the plans and talked with them, and I think this is a very reasonable request, and I think it'll be a good addition to the neighborhood.
Yes, sir. So, did you make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve.
Have a motion. Have a motion and a second. Ms. Link, you wanted
Mayor, this one requires a future
land use?
map change.
Yes, sir.
And a rezoning change.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And I can't even remember, which one do we do first?
Do the future
Okay,
development
so I'd
map.
like to make a motion that we approve the future use map.
Second.
Second. Now, Melissa, you can speak, and then we'll read the ordinance.
Commissioner Bailey might have answered my question about topography and utility lines running through this lot as the reason for it just being 1 lot. Because if you look at the neighborhood, that, the lots tend to be smaller with kind of modest-sized homes on them. And it just seems like, this lot would be an ideal opportunity to get several homes, which we do have a need for single-family, modest homes in Athens-Clarke County. We have a workforce housing study that states that quite clearly. So I'm just curious, the combination of these 3 lots that are already significantly larger than any of the lots in the neighborhood into 1 lot, does that have everything to do with the topography challenges and the utility?
Yes, it does. You might want to ask Brad Griffin about it.
Yeah.
But basically, 2 of the 3 lots are unbuildable because of the utilities situation. But Brad, do you want to say?
You're certainly severely restricted between utilities, storm drain easements, and tree-safe areas that were part of the subdivision.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
The map detailing that's on page 183. It's got that detail on it.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Anybody else have any questions, concerns? Okay, the ordinance. Thank you, Bill.
There are 2. The first is an ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to amending the official future development map of Athens-Clarke County by changing the designation of 3 parcels of land comprising approximately 1.568 acres located at 291, 293, and 299 Firefighter Court from corridor business to traditional neighborhood and for other purposes. The next is an ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to rezoning 3 parcels of land comprising approximately 1.568 acres located at 291, 293, and 299 Firefighter Court from CG Commercial General with conditions to RS8 Single-Family Residential and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. And what we're about to vote on is the changing the future development map. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll go to the actual special use change.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to make a motion that we accept the rezoning request with the condition as specified.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We now go to item number 19, and this will be the time for public input on that. And this is a request of Bobbie Rena Ellis for special use, taking property from single-family mixed-use density residential at 164 Ramble Hills Drive, and the proposed use is for an individual personal care home. So if anyone would like to speak to that, this would be the time to come to the podium. Yes, ma'am.
I'm also here for any questions if you might have any.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Okay, anybody else wish to speak to this? Okay, we'll come behind the rail, and this is in Mr. Neesmith's district. I
Yes,
believe you
ma'am.
have a commission-defined option.
Yeah, I have a question first up. Brad, we talked earlier, our message today about the rezoning sign that wasn't there today, or that was there earlier, I assume.
Yes.
Okay.
We always document, when signs are posted,
Right.
document by photograph and
Yeah.
part of the record.
Someone removed it.
They tend to either get blown over or disappear, and I think I did not confirm, but I think we may have even gone back out late this afternoon and reposted
Yeah,
for
okay.
tonight's meeting.
Yeah, okay, very good.
And this
Yeah.
one's going to take 2 votes, too,
Let's see.
for the
So it's a rezone and then a special use?
Future development map.
future development map.
And special use.
Special use.
Okay, so I'll first make a motion to accept the future development map change.
I'll second that.
Ms. Barron, would you read the ordinances for us?
The first is an ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to amending the official future development map of Athens-Clarke County by changing the designation of a parcel of land comprising approximately 1.03 acres located at 164 Ramble Hills Drive from rural residential to traditional neighborhood and for other purposes. The next is an ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to special use approval in the RS8 RM Limited Single-Family Residential Mixed-Density Residential Limited Overlay District on a parcel of land comprised of approximately 1.03 acres and located at 164 Ramble Hills Drive and for other purposes.
Thank you. And this, again, is changing the future development map. That's what we're voting on. We have a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Would it be inappropriate to ask the petitioner to come up? I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Would you come up, please?
I've noticed that you don't have a driveway. You have an apron, which is undeveloped, which we're going to require you to fix, but then there's no driveway. It's just grass and dirt.
Right.
I've got, just so you'll know, I don't know what your intentions are, but I'm adding a special purpose or a special condition that requires you to put in either a gravel or a pavement driveway.
Yes, that's what I'm planning to do.
Very good. So this won't hurt you.
Oh, no.
Excellent. Okay.
It's in the plans.
So I have a commission-defined option that adds the condition that the driveway from the apron to its end will be improved either by pavement or a gravel surface with permanent edging. And so I make a motion to accept this commission-defined option.
I'll second it.
Who seconded? Was Harry seconded. Have a motion, second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That concludes our items that are on our agenda, and this is the time that any citizen who wishes to speak to us about any item that was not on tonight's agenda may have your 3 minutes at the podium, so please come forward. And I'm not sure whether everybody here wants to speak, but since we have a number of people, if y'all would sort of queue up, it would help us with time. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everyone, Mayor and Commission. My name is Morgan King, and I live at 86 North Ave, apartment 42. I just want to thank you all for your service and dedication to the city of Athens. So as you may know, the city of Atlanta just enacted a parallel ordinance to give officers the discretion to either arrest someone or now give them a $75 fine or less for possession of under 1 ounce of marijuana. So I was here maybe over a year ago, and I remember being told that a parallel ordinance was not possible to happen in Athens. But our capital city, Atlanta, just, the city council voted unanimously 15-0 to yes to the parallel ordinance. And the mayor, Kasim Reed, he tweeted that he's going to sign it. So what's going to happen, I'm pretty dang sure. And Clarkston has had a parallel ordinance enacted for over a year now, I believe. And my question to you all is, why can't this happen in Athens? And why can't we have lesser penalties for nonviolent drug offenses, especially for marijuana, especially when African Americans are 4.7 times more likely to be arrested in Athens alone for marijuana. So that's my question to you all, and I hope you guys have a great night.
Thank you, Morgan. And for the information of any of you all who have not been here, and I'll ask you please not to do demonstrations again, out of respect to the people at the podium, that we do not interact with people at the podium. The lady that just talked to one of our commissioners was at their request for information. So basically, y'all are here just to talk to us. We're here to listen. So, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Scott Nelson, and I'm a professor of history at the University of Georgia. And I've been asked by the Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement to talk a little bit about the history of the Athens Monument. So I'm a historian of...
Excuse me, sir, what's your address?
360 Stanton Way. Okay. That's in 5 Points.
Yes, sir.
So I'm a historian of Reconstruction. And so I've written 4 books on this period. So this is something I know something about. I'm new, though, to Athens. The monument to the Confederate dead, finished and dedicated in June of 1872, was one of the first monuments to the Confederate dead, but it was also a monument to the Lost Cause and to the Klan. It was commissioned during Congressional Reconstruction when the South was divided into military districts. The U.S. Congress required that African Americans be allowed to vote in state elections, a move that former Confederates Benjamin Hill and Howell Cobb attacked. In a series of public speeches in July of 1868 called the Bush Arbor Speeches, Hill and Cobb forcefully attacked the newly written Georgia Constitution, which required that black people be allowed to vote. Those fiery speeches use the language of blood and soil, much like we hear in Charlottesville, saying that Congress was, quote, a band of foreigners, unquote, and that men should take up arms against black voters. Those Bush Arbor speeches started the Georgia Ku Klux Klan. In Athens, Atlanta, and throughout the upcountry, it led to secret orders being formed that harassed and intimidated black voters. Klansmen declared that they were the ghosts of the Confederate dead who still wore the burial shrouds of fallen soldiers, and that's the reason for the white robes. The Klan said they were, quoting Hebrews 12:23, the spirits of just men made perfect. They killed black politicians and scared away white ones. Klansmen argued that black men and women would be so scared to see the ghosts of the Confederacy that they would not push either to vote in elections or try to take classes at the University of Georgia. At the same time, in 1868, Benjamin Hill, Howell Cobb, and Cobb's sister Margaret Rutherford promoted a memorial to the Confederate dead. Margaret Rutherford became the front person for this effect through the Ladies Memorial Association. The monument would use the same language as Cobb, Hill, and other originators of the Klan in Georgia. I can read from the monument for you. These heroes, ours in the unity of blood, struggled for the rights of states, unquote. On the other side, it says, bright angels come and guard our sleeping heroes, unquote. Who were the angels come to guard these sleeping heroes? The Klan, whose leaders Ben Hill and Howell Cobb were the principal supporters of the Athens Monument. Confederate veteran Alexander Irwin made the connection between Klan and monument clear. It is said that the spirits of dead have come back to the earth. Irwin joked at the beginning of the dedication, and he was not prepared to deny this, he joked. He made it clear that the monument had a political message against black voting, saying no defeat, no misfortune, no tyrant, no president, no Congress, no fanatical party, no mad majority. By 1872, when the monument was finished, it was designed as a beacon to recognize the Confederacy, but also to the Klansmen, the angels and ghosts of the Confederacy who had restored power to the planter class.
Sir, I'm sorry, your 3 minutes
Yeah.
is up.
The monument also insults the heroes, black and white men and women, who fought against the Klan as the Klan gathered under their shadow in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Klans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Good day. My name is Noah D. Johnson, 651 Lakeland Way. Today we come to you with a respectful request to have this monument obelisk on the middle of Broad Street to be moved. I won't waste all your time talking about race, the Confederacy, and whether the Southern states' secession was about slavery or states' rights, because I logically ask myself, states' rights to do what? And because I've read the Georgia Secession Ordinance and the Confederacy Constitution, both clarifying its purpose, not to mention its inspiration of Jim Crow laws and the ratchet KKK. Instead, I want to bring to your attention a traffic and pedestrian safety concern. Daily, I sit outside of Walker's and Starbucks on College, watching semi-trucks and utility trucks turning right on Broad from College, barely making it due to the Confederate monument, parked cars, pedestrians, and both students and locals waiting to cross the street. The obelisk honors the dead for dying. Therefore, a more suitable place would be the cemetery where they rest, not on a park in the middle of the street, making a statement of values not shared by the majority of citizens. This monument has been repaired in the past while in its present location, so probability is there. With this probability, we ask you to represent us with a strong backbone, even if it calls to go against the state in making our request manifest. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah.
Mocha Jasmine Johnson, 651 Lakeland Way. I just want to say that I understand that the monument thing is dealing with legalities, and it is not, there's not a federal law in place that say that that this monument cannot be moved. It is there on a state level. But yet we continue to uphold oppressive laws and policies that have been put in place for over 100 years. But if Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King, and other political leaders did not challenge the current system that we have in place, slavery would still exist today. A lot of people died during the Civil War. And I just feel like if we're trying to move forward as a progressive and cohesive community, we should look for solutions and different ways that we can create that image. That monument represents a lot of tragedy. And I just want to read this real quick. We hold as undeniable truths that the government of the various states and of the Confederate itself were established exclusively by the white race for themselves and their prosperity, that the African American race had no agency in their establishment, that they were rightfully held and regarded as inferior and dependent race. And in condition only could their existence in this country be rendered beneficial or tolerance. Declaration of Succession, February 1861. We're still upholding some of those policies. When we leave that monument out there, we don't push back. All I have to say is that as a progressive community that we try to say that we are, Athens is progressive, I feel like instead of hiding behind the laws, that we could find solutions where it's mutually beneficial to the government and to the people of this community.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Hello, my name is Kate Dahlstrand, 247 Holmes Avenue. I am a historian and I sit on the board of directors for Athens for Everyone. And I study Reconstruction and white supremacy specifically, so I am going to talk about race. When the masses of Confederate dead transformed into symbols of honor and sacrifice, the history being crafted rested on the same idea of white supremacy that Confederate Vice President Alexander Stephens argued in his famous Cornerstone speech. White supremacy was, at the time, a given. Building monuments like the one here in Athens was an act of civil religion, where white Athenians could bow down before the altar of the fallen soldier. In doing so, white Athens and white Georgia and the entirety of the white South made a decision: honor the fallen white dead and ignore the freed former slaves who lived. The 1880s and 1890s witnessed a reconciliation between the blue and the gray, and still managed to exclude the black experience. White Athenians made a choice. They chose to redeem their past by writing the black experience out of history. The monument is nothing more than cultural pushback against emancipation and a failed attempt at treasonous secession. Black men and women look at a white imposing obelisk and are reminded of their second-class status in this community. Where is the monument to the enslaved Athenians who built UGA? Where is the monument to the enslaved blacksmith who forged the arch? But to be clear, this is not my decision on how to correct this historical tragedy. I'm here to ask you to listen to what the Black Athenians want. Hear their voices and understand that this city has gotten away with ignoring their needs and desires for far too long. I'm only here to support the Athens anti-discrimination movement and Mocha Johnson. As a board member for Athens for Everyone, I can tell you that they have our full support in this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dolston, I'm sorry.
My name is Leah Gaucher. I'm a comedian and a pet sitter, and I just wanted to talk to you about
Excuse me, what's your address?
my address.
Yes, sir.
It's 59 McKinley Drive, Athens, Georgia,
Thank you.
06001. Athens is a beautiful town. It's a town filled with artists. It's a town filled with creatives. It's a town filled with love. So I think our town should reflect that love and not hatred. I think we need to practice what we preach. I think we need to set an example for ourselves now and for posterity. We need to not be all talk. We need to be action. So hate has no place in Athens. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaliyah.
Hi, my name is Lene Sawinski. I live at 730 Whitehall Road. I stand with the Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement in the support of moving the Confederate monument to Oconee Hill Cemetery. Keeping the monument in what is essentially the gateway to our community and literally the gateway to UGA suggests that Athens is in support of what the Confederacy stood for, the enslavement of people of color and the furthering of white supremacy. While the monument was created as a memorial for young men killed in battle, this is not what the monument stands for today. Having a monument in such a prominent location serves as the validation for those spreading hate, as it preserves white supremacist values and will, if it stays, for generations to come. Keeping it in the gateway of our community suggests that this city is going to protect those trying to further what the Confederacy stood for. This is not what a diverse community such as Athens needs in order to fully support all of its residents. We should be looking forward to what we can do to help marginalized communities, not looking backward at and memorializing what we have done to these marginalized communities. We've seen what happens when we ignore these statues and monuments and what they stand for. Ignoring the issues will not keep the monument safe, if that is your goal, and it will most definitely not keep the residents of Athens safe. A memorial such as this should sit with the people it is memorializing in the cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Linebaugh. I live at 730 Whitehall, Athens, Georgia. I stand in support of the movement of the monument from Broad Street to Oconee Hills Cemetery. The memorial idealizes a history we're still fighting to overcome, one that treats white supremacy as normal as the status quo and as unchanging. As evidenced by the violence in Charlottesville, a memorial and monuments to the Confederate States of America are lightning rods for violence from those who have not learned from the failures of our country's past and who seek to recreate it at the expense of the strides that we have taken. This is not a call to forget or hide our past, but to acknowledge the underlying violence and white supremacy that led us to this moment, and to transfer the memorial to a place more conducive to quiet, solemn reflection. We must learn from the reality of our history, not the rose-colored nostalgia of a fairy tale that romanticizes oppression. We're not perfect, and we can't hold our ancestors to perfection, but we must strive to do better and to hold them and ourselves accountable by protecting the present and a future Athens that respects the diversity of its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
My name is Richard Banton. I live at 580 East Broad Street. I stand with the Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement in their effort to get the Confederate monument on Broad Street removed as well. I understand that legal options are being explored at this time. I understand that the monument cannot be moved in the next week. That would be impossible. What I would caution against is when the mayor and commission find out what is possibly a legal solution to what we're asking for is to remain complacent or try to remain complacent. There are a lot of people in this community who feel as though removing this monument, relocating it, I should say, would be an act of erasure, erasing history. And that's just simply not true. Yet it's an argument that we hear all the time. A monument can only serve and only will be a symbol because it provides no context, and in its public display, it's explicitly honorary, and that's its only function. We learn history in textbooks. We learn history through reading. We learn history through media and community leaders. And sometimes, especially here in this state, we're failing to provide the right history as it stands with those materials. And I don't think that this honorary display belongs in this town if we are what we say we are.
Thank you, Mr. Bent.
I'm Greg Wagstaff. I live at 229 Kalima Avenue, Athens. I'm an AADM board member and editor of the AADM People's Press regarding the Civil War Monument. One group says they want to throw away our heritage, our history, our traditions, the suffering of our people, the trials and the work our ancestors have done. To us, they say, the monument represents the heritage of our people, of our families. The other side says heritage. Where's our heritage? Our families were stolen, bought, sold. To us, this monument means 250 years of the iron rod of slavery, 100 years of segregation and racial injustice. And today, children in this community bear the weight of discrimination. It may be too much to ask the people of Athens to try to understand their neighbors. It might be too much to ask to respect or honor the histories and experience of another people. It might be too much to ask to walk a mile in their shoes. It's easier to hit back. Winners and losers, partisanship. It may be too much to ask the people of Athens to stop looking toward the past and look toward the future. It may be too much to ask the people of Athens to try to understand, much less love, their neighbors. But if we don't ask, we must look at the chaos of Charlottesville. Dr. King wrote, "The time is cluttered with the wreckage of communities which surrendered to hatred and violence." We ask for your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Wagstaff.
Yes, Walter Swanson, 200 Springtree Road in Athens, Georgia. I've been before the board twice in the last 3 years about street names and their significance, particularly to all of Athens and the minorities that are here and though don't have any streets after them. My heritage is half mostly Swedish with Swanson, but I also have heritage in Georgia, slaveholders in Georgia, who, when their slaves were taken away, they moved to Texas. It is embarrassing to see that monument right in the smack middle of town and knowing what it means. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
My name is Rachel Freeman. I'm at 425 Riverbend.
Excuse me, honey, is it Freeman?
Yes. I'm at 425 Riverbend Parkway, Athens, Georgia, 30605. I wanted to talk about the marijuana decriminalization ordinance that passed through City Council in Atlanta, Georgia yesterday. Marijuana decriminalization is bigger than just the plant. The decriminalization of marijuana could save homes from being broken. It could save kids from growing up without one parent or both parents. It can prevent people from being a victim of the plea bargain system. And it can also prevent students from losing their financial aid. And of course can save Athens lots of money that goes into arresting and holding these people. And the criminality of marijuana has already diminished greatly due to so many cities and states decriminalizing and legalizing. So what I ask is if you would all consider a parallel ordinance similar or mirroring the one that has passed in Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi there, Mayor and Commission. My name is Nathan Wasserman. I live at 200 Old Princeton Road. I'd just like to take a moment to thank you for having us all here and letting us participate in local government. There's a war being waged on the people of this country, and it's due to the fact that many of them are apathetic, but it's really due to the fact that the few in power are playing on the vices of these people and using them against themselves, really. There's 30,000 Georgians that are annually arrested for marijuana possession, misdemeanor amounts of, amounts under an ounce. And when we are systematically imprisoning young African Americans over whites, as was stated earlier, you're 4.7 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession in Athens if you're black versus if you're white. If we remain apathetic and we let these people in power stomp all over us, what are we doing but letting ourselves go to waste? I mean, we're people, and we all have feelings, and we all bleed the same blood. So, my question to you is, will you remain apathetic in the state of affairs that we're in? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wasserman.
Good evening. I'm James Stewart. I live at 535 Springdale Street, and I'm here tonight in support of the Athens Anti-Discriminations movement and its request. Last week, I went to review the Envision agenda, and after that review, I actually went to look at the actual Confederate monument. The former speaks strongly of Athens as a community concerned and thoughtful about recognizing its problems and seeking a future based on solving them. The latter presents Athens as advocating slavery. The contrast is sharp, the contradiction is brutal. The monument is much more than a memorial to Confederate soldiers killed in war. It is a statement, an advocacy, even a celebration of a cause, a way of life based on slavery that I believe most Athenians consider immoral. The association that created the monument, the Athens Ladies Memorial Foundation, said their goal was a monument, and I quote, as white and spotless as the cause for which they, the Confederate soldiers, died. My source is the flagpole of Blake Auld. This meaning of the monument still lives, and the placement of the monument in the center of downtown presents the community as advocating this meaning. I am aware that I am telling the Commission points of consideration that it already knows, and I recognize that the Commission must be concerned about its legal authority to remove the monument. I hope that the Commission will pursue its investigations of its legal constraints and freedoms with a strong and urgent commitment to removal. To this end, and as a pathway that brings together the moral and legal, may lie in the meaning of the word safety. Some have suggested that the law allows removal for reasons of safety. If this is correct, I urge the Commission to emphasize this meaning of safety as not limited to physical safety, but having a clear and extensive dimension that includes emotional and spiritual well-being, the mental health of the community. Everyone in Athens, especially its youth and the future generations, should be safe from the mental stress, assault, contradictions, and hateful direction that the monument provokes. In addition,
Mr. Stewart, I'm
visions of the
sorry.
future
Your
of
time is up,
Athens,
sir.
such as the Envision agenda, require a safe environment in which to develop and flourish. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to have to interrupt y'all, but trying to keep everybody having opportunity. Mr. Denson.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Tim Denson, 483 Quailwood Drive. I just wanted to speak to actually three things really quickly here. First, I would like to stand with my support with the Athens anti-discrimination movement, and what I think is a very practical request. I understand, as everybody who spoke here earlier, and as all you do, that there is a 2001 Georgia state law that says that these honorific monuments to what the law actually refers to, heroes of the Confederacy, are not allowed to be removed or moved, except for safety reasons. Because that safety reasons, I think there's an out there, as was really well put just now, the emotional safety of our community. And what I really want to think about is, like, what is the purpose of that law? And I think the purpose is obvious, to protect those monuments, and therefore to keep the honor there with them. And I want us to think, do we believe that that state law is rooted in racism, white supremacy? I personally do. I think it's kind of hard to argue it's not. Therefore, if we are abiding by that law, this county government, are we then complicit in this racism and white supremacy? I think that's something for us to think about, and to wonder if we are not taking steps to move that monument, which I think that's a solution that most people should be fine with. It's a monument to the dead. Let's move it to a cemetery. But again, if we are abiding by that law, are we complicit in this racism, white supremacy? I right now am stating that I am not, and I am against this law, and I think we should go ahead and move it and find ways to do so, even if that ends up being a legal challenge from the state later on. The second thing I want to speak on is the marijuana decriminalization. It's quite an achievement that the City of Atlanta did. And of course, as I think all of y'all know, it was unanimous, 15-0. And that's mainly because the Atlanta Police Department was fully in support of this law, of this policy change. Because they realized it actually frees them up to actually tackle more violent crimes and to focus on better priorities. So I think that the least we could do is have that sent to the Legislative Review Committee to at least start exploring options to go forward with that. And the third thing I want to bring up is I was going over the contracts exceeding $100,000 on the agenda for this month, and I saw in there that we were spending $22,400 to renew a license with Kaspersky Labs, Kaspersky antivirus software. I think a lot of y'all maybe are familiar that the federal government just banned all federal offices from using Kaspersky Labs, Kaspersky antivirus software as of September 12th because of the connection between them and Russian hacking. There's also, if you go through, you'll see that there's just tons and tons of people saying that everybody needs to pull away from this. Best Buy and Office Depot are no longer selling it because of this. And the vendor that we get this from, Soft Choice Corporation, while I was sitting there, I looked up, they do offer some other options that are not done through Kaspersky Labs that I think we could instead take on and look into. And I would probably at least recommend looking into that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Denson.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the commission. My name is William Lowe. I live at 229 North Avenue. I stand with the Athens anti-discrimination movement, and I would like to call attention to a growing communal desire to relocate the Confederate monument on Broad to a more suitable location for the following reasons. The monument, while intended to memorialize soldiers who opposed the United States of America, represents secession, an act of rebellion and treason. While we all share a desire to preserve our history and our heritage, this monument, occupying a central location in our city, only represents a minuscule portion of the local population. The monument in no way represents our diverse and growing culture, nor does it serve as a proper welcome to our visitors and our student population. Considering the statue's historical value and the opportunities for study among later generations, the center of a busy intersection serves as a poor venue. Robert E. Lee, the leader of the Confederate Army, said the following in regard to monuments of the Confederacy. I think it wiser not to keep open the sores of war, but to follow the examples of those nations who endeavored to obliterate the marks of civil strife, to commit to oblivion the feelings engendered. This monument, serving as a memorial to the Confederate soldiers for some, represents oppression, slavery, and the Jim Crow South for others. As state law permits the monument to be moved in the interest of preservation or when presenting a safety concern, we must consider the potential danger to our city's function and our people. The monument presents a substantial traffic concern and could become a rallying point for protesters and hate groups, as we've seen in other states. Instead of considering what that monument meant at the time of its creation, we must consider what it means today. I believe the Oconee Hill Cemetery, for instance, would be a more fitting setting for a monument of such significance. Thank you all for your attention, and thank you for the service to our city.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
Mayor Denson and Commissioners, my name is Gordon Roden. I live at 340 Heather Cove. I'm here tonight to talk about a reschedule of an event that was planned in September. We began planning an event a couple of months ago, a night to honor our first responders of Athens-Clarke County. Little did we know that on 9/11, the night we had it planned, all of those people would be working. There was the first responders were called out in South Bend, I think, that weekend as well. But when we got back, we had to postpone that. So we have rescheduled that for October the 30th. We have a flyer, and I would love for our commissioners to come that night. This is a nonpartisan night. This is not Republican. It's not Democrat. It is a night to honor our men and women who serve us on a daily basis. When we pick up that phone and call 911, we're not asking if they're Republican or Democrat. We're not asking them their ethnicity. We are wanting those people to come to us. And so it is a night that we want to honor them, and we want to invite you as the commissioners to come and be with us. Beach Haven Baptist Church, 6 p.m. on Monday night, October 30th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Roden.
Y'all are going to have to excuse my voice. I'm a little bit sick, and I can't talk for very long, or else I'm going to start coughing. But I just wanted to stand here, and my name is Katie Orden, and I live at 145 Mill Street. Wanted to stand and place my support for the anti-discrimination movement, and I just wanted to take a moment. There's basically everything's been said that I want to reiterate, but I just wanted to thank Mocha and Noah for organizing all of this, and I think it's really cool that we're doing this way and being able to speak with you all before doing anything else really dramatic. And I know that in North Carolina, people just kind of went and tore a statue down, and there was a lot of arrests, and it was kind of ugly, and it was probably really intense and a lot to deal with. And I think this is cool that we were all very patient, and that Charlottesville happened, and everybody was able to mourn that and get over that and kind of deconstruct that as well and figure out what all of that meant, and then come back together and decide to just speak with y'all and actually ask you guys to do something about it instead of doing something reactive and in the moment. And anyways, I just want to thank you guys for listening and providing us with this opportunity, and thank you to the anti-discrimination movement for hosting all of this. And again, I just wanted to ask y'all to listen to what everybody's saying, and listen and pay attention to the research that's been done on what the statute really stands for, because it's really unhealthy, and I think it's definitely a good idea to move it. I think it's ridiculous that it's actually still standing now, but yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Horton.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Charlie Maddox. I live at 115 Avalon Drive. A friend of mine bet me $2 I couldn't sit here all night and not say anything, and I lost. I am in support of any anti-discrimination. Let that go on the record. Any anti-discrimination. I've fought against it for years and years. I'll continue. I've probably been discriminated against more than anybody here, probably collectively, but there is a way and a time. And I do implore our mayor and commission to look at what we can do. If anything offends my brother, it offends me. I'm not going to say just go down there and tear it down, but there is a way that we as a community have to move together. Because if I take it down and I offend my brother, I've lost the battle. I may have won a little bit, but I've lost the battle. We have to be considerate if we're going to move together as a community. We're not going to take it down in spite, to get even with you, what you did, what you didn't do. We need to take it down as a community because it's the right thing. Not that it's cool or it's what's happening or it feels good or anything. I've been here 71 years. I marched on one side of that monument and the Klan marched on the other one, and the statue didn't bother us. Hamilton Holmes and Charlene walked into those gates and those monuments were there. I understand that recent uprising in Charlotte brings some things to our attention, and that maybe that's good. But what we need to do, we don't need to have that kind of thing. We need to move together as a community. Our mayor and commission look at what are the options that will heal this community, not just to satisfy some and put the others. I'm glad to see all these young people here. It's great, and I want to encourage y'all to take that energy that you wait all day and you come down here and go out into the community, because the bottom line comes up. Nobody cares what you know. They don't care how much history you know. They don't care how you feel or how cool it is. They care if they know you care. And I say, if you go out there and you work with these mentor programs, the Boys and Girls Club, all of these things, and we can move mountains together. Fighting each other, all we can do is create rubble. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox.
My name's Jacob Collins. I didn't expect to come here and say anything either. I live at 425 Riverbend Parkway, too, by the way. This probably isn't going to be very popular, what I'm about to say, but I'm actually in favor of keeping the monument. And I'm proud that we're able to be here and have a civil discussion about it. But in my experience, I believe it's about our heritage. I know there could be a rebuttal to that, but there's hundreds of thousands of people died during the Civil War. And most of the people that did die really did not, they were fighting for states' rights. The leaders, maybe in the grand scheme of things, were, they had different motives. I believe the people that died and that the statue is erected for was for people that were out fighting, brothers, fathers, uncles, and they died out in fields, blown away by cannons. And I think the statue is there to memorialize that people that died, not for a cause, but for the people that died during that war, like any other war. That's all I wanted to say. I didn't come prepared. I wasn't expecting to speak at all. I just wanted to give you all my opinion. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Have a good night.
Jacob.
My name is Laura Gordon. I live at 550 Willow Street. I wanted to add something. I stand with the anti-discrimination group that I hope that we can move it. And when it is moved, I want to add one more thing, which is I think it would be appropriate and fitting to add some context on there by adding like an aluminum plaque or something on the side that says explaining why we did what we did, why the community decided this should be moved. So it doesn't just sit there continuing to, commemorate what it commemorates without some added context to honor the decision-making process and what all these people have expressed. We need to say why we did what we did so that it can stand there, and you can also have the alternate voice, like visiting a plantation and having some context about these are the slaves' houses, this is what happened, slavery is real, so as not to sugarcoat or varnish what this stood for, and to add a 21st century commentary to a historic monument. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Josh Russell. I live in 130 Spalding Court, and I'm here to also talk about the ordinance that was passed in Atlanta to decriminalize possession of cannabis under an ounce. And the real reason I'm here speaking on this today is one word, that's freedom. It's the word that our country was founded on, and I believe it's the word that our country thrives on. And since 1985, our prisons, the population has risen more than 500%. And there's a good reason for that. It's because our prisons have become privatized. There are people who are profiting off of taking the freedom away from others. And I think that's wrong. And I think that that's the very thing that America's against. There are children losing their fathers and mothers, and there's people that are losing their future over what, over nothing, pretty much. Over a drug that is less effective than alcohol, or the pharmaceutical drugs that are out there ruining people's lives. And so what I think is that you all need to truly think about all of the people that these laws affect, and think about the lives that have been ruined by these laws and the people that are profiting off of the imprisonment of others. I think that we should stand together in progress instead of standing divided in prohibition. I'm an American, and as an American, the thing I believe in most is freedom. And I stand here today in the name of freedom, and I ask you, as fellow Americans, to please stand with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Russell Edwards, 400 Duncan Springs Road. My great-great-granddaddy died fighting for the Confederacy, the Second Battle of Manassas. James Monroe Edwards. I fully support the Confederate monument, moving it. And we can move it. State law holds that appropriate measures for the preservation, protection, and interpretation of such monuments shall not be prohibited. This monument was installed in 1872 by the Ladies Memorial Association, led by Thomas and Hal Cobb's sister, Laura Rutherford. Her daughter, Mildred Rutherford, went on to serve as principal at Lucy Cobb Institute for decades and was probably the most famous Georgian during her time. She was the lead historian of the United Daughters of the Confederacy and served as the Ladies Memorial Association. They put these memorials all over the place. And when the Klan reformed in Athens, the second iteration of the Klan, it was formed in 1917, 3 months after the NAACP was chartered in Athens. NAACP celebrates the 100-year anniversary this year. And when they formed that Klan, they called it the Rutherford Clavern. Same name as that park where that obelisk currently sits. Why keep it there? I don't know why. There was a huge meeting yesterday at the library. The only person who wanted to keep it there was from Hull, Georgia. I've yet to find one Athenian who wants to stand against the overwhelming tide of folks who say, put it in Oconee Hill Cemetery, where it belongs. I was at a meeting at the NAACP a few weeks ago. Commissioner Sims, you were there. And we heard an elderly gentleman who rose and said, in the 50s or the 60s, late 50s, the Klan used to burn crosses at that memorial downtown. This conversation that's being provoked around this monument, to me, is fascinating. I put it out every Thursday on my radio show. You got a story about the Klan, give me a call. Somebody called last week. I remember 1982. The Klan had a big rally at the Varsity. That wasn't too long ago. This is part of Athens history, but let's put the history where it belongs. Not right downtown in the center, in the heart of our town. A memorial to the Klan. Let's put it in Oconee Hill Cemetery. State law allows it. Thank you.
Adam Lasla, 188 Northview. I'd just like to point out the very clear connection between the Confederate monument and marijuana decriminalization, which we saw in Atlanta yesterday. We have a statue to white supremacy that we need to get rid of, and we're seeing systemic racism, that same white supremacy in practice, including here in Athens, where black people are 4 times more likely to go to jail for the same crime as white people. So let's do both. Let's move the monument and let's decriminalize marijuana with a parallel ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, we're going to come behind the rail, and now we have reports from the people behind the rail. Mine is the first. I got several things that I want to mention tonight. Some of you may wonder what these green ribbons are that Mr. Neesmith and I are wearing. This is National Mental Health Week, and we both are wearing these ribbons in support of that. I want to thank Mr. Neesmith, who represents the Mayor and Commission on the Advantage Behavioral Board, who work to try to help with mental health issues in our community. Next thing on my agenda is I'd like to send out congratulations to Mr. Jamie Boswell, who is one of our citizens here in Athens. He's been elected to chair the Georgia Department of Transportation. And I've been involved in government here for close to 40 years. This is my 39th year in elected office. And to my knowledge, he's the first person from our district who's ever served on the DOT. So now for him to be the chair is a very valuable asset to our community. We also have a new Superior Court judge that had the honor. She invited me to stand with her because she's the first female Superior Court judge in this circuit. And she asked me because I was the first woman elected to office to Athens City Council here. And it was a great honor to be there with her. And she was sworn in as our newest Superior Court judge in Atlanta this morning. See if there's anything else that I've...
That was Regina Quick, by the way.
Yes, Judge Regina Quick. Seems like there was something else that I want... Oh, I knew it was something important. Proclamations. We have a group adopting to help clean up our streets. It's Alpha Kappa Alpha, who will try to keep Chase Street from Oneida to West Hancock clean. And for those of you who are not familiar with this, different groups adopt sections of highway to try to keep our community better looking. I would prefer that we didn't have to do that. And I say that every time. I wish there was no need for people to pick up the litter behind other people. And I think it's something that we need to be doing ourselves and teaching our children. But we really appreciate those people that do it. And that's all I have for tonight. Is there anything you'd like to bring us, Mr. Williams?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Maddox?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Behrman?
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, we're going to hear from our commissioners, and we'll start with Mr. Neesmith, since Mr. Hamby's not here. And we'll end with Ms. Bell.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I really have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Paley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing that I can think of that I'd like to mention is that this past weekend, we had an event that was sponsored by Leisure Services called Rivers Alive, and they work with a lot of the environmental groups, including UOWN, which is the Upper Oconee Watershed Network. And basically, we had hundreds of citizens turn out to help clean up around riverways throughout our county. And we had a lot of our staff participate, including our county manager and one of our assistant managers. And it was one of the biggest events of its kind in the state. I was told that we have a big turnout, and it's just very successful. It's been going on for years, and I was very glad to see it and happy to participate.
Thank you. Do you have any idea how many tons y'all picked up?
No, ma'am, I haven't heard, but
Yeah.
there were probably at least 300 volunteers.
Yeah.
And we were getting all kinds of things. Tires. I actually, besides having a couple of tires in my canoe, I had a shopping cart we pulled out of the Oconee River.
Yeah. Just getting those tires out is
Yes, ma'am.
amazing. Thank you for doing that, and everybody else that did it too. Yes, ma'am. Is that
I
right?
believe the count was 420
Tires.
that they were preparing. I think somebody donated some of the food for it, and they had a head count for that, and
that's
it
how
was the
many
most
people. Okay.
ever. And then it does take them a while to get the tally, but Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful will get the tally on the tons of that, and I think they have a tire count. And this kind of leads a little bit into, well, a lot of it of what I wanted to share with everybody. I had the pleasure of being at the 2017 Litter Enforcement Training Workshop. Assistant Manager Johnson was there to introduce our guest, and he was a gentleman from Department of Natural Resources. And the 3 hours of information on law enforcement concepts, tactics, and training on litter was very informative. It was organized by Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, Athens-Clarke County Landscape Management, our code enforcement, and then there was also some input from Leisure Services. And the amount of time and money and staff time that we are spending picking up the litter is just outstanding. It's disgusting. It really is. And I'm hoping that we will maybe get a workshop on that, because I think it's important for us to know heading into the budget about it, and that I'm hoping that anything that we can do to strengthen the ability to enforce it. We have, I have a little flyer that was given out, and it talks about this different enforcement vehicles that we have for everything from dumping. And one thing of interest, did you know that our wrecker drivers, when they have an accident or at a scene of an accident, they're responsible to clean up the debris, not just take the car away, but they're supposed to take up that debris. Just little things like that that are leaving unsightly and unsafe things in our community. There were several dozen people that attended this work session, and everyone from the police department, code enforcement, we had a representative from the attorney's office, we had a UGA police department representative, landscape, code enforcement, a lot of brainstorming going on about things that can be done. So I hope that we'll have that coming forward for us. And I wanted to share, I talked to you before about these ugly these things, these advertisements from the Banner Herald, Athens Banner Herald, being thrown out. These are all different Thursdays. I picked these up on walking. This is not being read, Athens Banner Herald. This is just litter, and I'm trying to find out. I think the manager told me if you don't want this stuff, you could put a no solicitation sign on your property. But this is people that just, they don't even pick them up, and some of them are being thrown into our right of way. So I'd like to look at what we can do about that. Today's walk was this bag. And so it's like every Thursday, these things are being thrown out. And so I collected these. This was just for my walk today. These I have been gathering. But anyway, I think I might have my little litter shame thing for the newspaper. I wish they would just contact whoever they can to use those lovely kiosks that we have downtown. They could put stacks of them there for people to get. But these are not getting to people to use and read. They're just littering our neighborhoods. So that's my little litter speech. And I do applaud the litter workshop, and hopefully we can get some things, stronger enforcement.
Well, thank you. That's why every time we have somebody adopting an area to pick up litter, I have to say what I say about it's a shame that we have to have people doing that, because it's something that we all need to take to heart for ourselves by example, and teach our children, because we are spending enormous amounts of money on picking up litter that could go to better uses in this community.
Right, and so for 4 times a year, the Adopt a Highway people have to pick up, and a lot of them do it more often. And so then they organize those, and then our solid waste has to go collect what they collected, and that's where the numbers are coming from and how they can validate the time that's spent. But last winter evidently was a tipping point of the increased volume of it. And it might be that we need to look at, I had no idea that we didn't require people to have garbage service. It just never occurred to me that that was optional. If you're not being provided, if you have private provider and you're in the area for private providers, that was optional. I had no idea. What did we think they were going to do with that trash? I don't know. But anyway, hopefully maybe we can address some of these things.
In the central city, it is required, but when
know
we consolidated, that was one of the things that was not enforced on the larger community.
Okay, so that's it for mine.
Ms.
Thank
Link?
you.
I want to thank all the folks that came out tonight to speak on what, as Mr. Laszlo pointed out, are very much related issues. We have this monument in the center of town, which, as the professor pointed out, the intent of it very much was a white supremacist intent. Those who instigated the installation of the monument were founders of the Klan in Athens. That's something that I was unaware of. I have a background in art history. I actually took a seminar in graduate school on funeral sculpture. It was always my impression that that monument was purely a funerary monument. It turns out that is not the case. It seems to be an object of mourning that's basically serving as a smokescreen for the adulation of treason and insurrection, and treason and insurrection that was to uphold white supremacy and slavery in this nation. It's our great shame. that we are a nation that was built on genocide of our Native Americans and built by the labor of enslaved peoples. So I hope that we can have a serious conversation. I know that the manager and the attorney are taking a look at laws behind the scenes. And it's good to know that here in Athens that we are approaching this in a very reasoned manner. We see what's happened in Charlottesville and in Durham. And I hope that this conversation can continue steadily. And also I want to congratulate the Atlanta City Council for their vote last night. I was actually in Atlanta this weekend at a rally for Senator Vincent Fort, who's running for mayor of Atlanta. And, he promised if he becomes mayor, he would decriminalize. Well, it looks like they went ahead and did it without him. Senator Bernie Sanders was speaking at that rally, and he calls for a national decriminalization. And it's very, very, very much the case that African Americans are many, many more times likely to be jailed for minor marijuana possession. And it's another great shame of this country that we have that disparity. And I hope that we can all commit to tackling the systemic mechanisms that cause that. And we can move forward and become that one united, equal, and free people that we should be. Thanks.
Mr. Kurtz.
Two brief things. One, continuing the trash talk from some earlier speakers. I wanted to let everybody here at City Hall tonight know, and let anybody who's watching this throughout the world know, that we have a mechanism at our hands if you do see somebody littering from a vehicle. There's a partnership between Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful and the Sheriff's Department here in Clarke County. And so if you get that tag number and you call the Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful office, the sheriff will then send the litterer a letter letting them know of their violation of our local law. And so I had to take advantage of that this week when I saw somebody throw a piece of paper out their door on College Avenue near MLK, and thought, I don't know that everybody knows that this is available to us, but let's go ahead and spread the word. And I wanted to briefly mention to my friends in the audience who I think are applauding what's a rational penalty for low-scale drug possession in Atlanta, that in fact what happened is not decriminalization, but it's a reduced penalty. So in the same way that littering is criminal activity and there's a low-scale penalty for that, what Atlanta did is not decriminalization, but again, reduced penalty.
Mr. Sims.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, I would like for us to put on our agenda to ask our legislative delegation to look into enacting whatever type of legislation we might need to remove the monument. But I think we can do that through our legislative delegation and do it in the appropriate manner versus tyranny, if we might say. I also like for us to ask that the restriping of the crosswalk at the Triangle Plaza be done. And I also like to thank Solid Waste for the removal of limbs that were out in the street during our little storm that we had. And it was really a public safety issue, and they got on it right away and cleared it up and made it where people did not have to drive out into the street to actually see around the limbs that were there. They did an excellent job, and they were very timely in doing so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just wanted to say that thoughts and prayers are with everyone that's been affected between the hurricanes, tropical storms, and of course the shooting in Las Vegas. And I think what's really uplifting is to see how people have come together to help one another. And we saw that here locally as well, with the storm damage we had. So I do want to commend our staff on the local response that we had. Along with our staff, AT&T, Georgia Power, Walton and Jackson EMCs, working pretty much round the clock to get people's power and phones and all that kind of stuff back up. And that was no small feat. And I think, not that we're looking to have a disaster, but I think, we certainly prepared well for this one. And I think it says a lot for our emergency management here in Athens. So commend staff for that. Last Friday, we had the airport commercial terminal dedication, which was really awesome. Looking forward to some real exciting things maybe to happen there over the next few years. Wanted to just shout out to Angela Dalton and Interim Director David Fluck for their efforts, as well as our SPLOST admin Derek Doster and Keith Sanders, who worked really tirelessly on getting that pulled together. And it was really neat to see Ben Epps' son there too, which is really neat, and some other family members as well. Also think it's a good opportunity, given that we're talking about being connected and talking about increasing the experience of people who have access to internet, that we keep in mind that not everybody does have access. And I heard a stat recently about some students at ALPS that only, and this was a specific teacher's classroom, the kids are given technology to take home, tablets to take home, but only 25% of her students had access at home. And that's concerning. And so I think it's a good opportunity. I know we've had some discussions. I think we're going to be hearing more from the manager about possibly a Athens-Clarke County-owned utility, broadband type utility that could provide that. I think that's something we definitely need to pursue, possibly free, possibly for a small fee. But I do think that's something we should certainly look into, and I look forward to hearing more about that from the manager. Couple other things. Envision Athens wrapped up, which is the public-private visioning effort for Athens, the community and economic development strategy for Athens, wrapped up 4 public meetings last week. We had over 1,100 points of input on the draft action agenda. There is still, though, time. We do have an online tool up now. I think I forwarded that to the mayor and commission today for y'all to send out to your constituents so they'll know. But they can go on. They will do essentially electronically what we did on paper, which is pick the top 5 priorities that you see across the agenda, because there's over 100 actions and certainly not possible to do all of them. But we are interested in seeing where the community has some enthusiasm and interest in those areas, so we can start prioritizing what to do. That will be up until midnight next Monday. On top of that, we have launched, Athens-Clarke County has launched the comp plan update, and those public meetings began last night. Brad Griffin and his staff, specifically Gavin Hassemer, they had the meeting last night at Cornerstone, which was on needs and opportunities. And again, the comp plan is the local government's plan. We're using the information we got from Envision Athens specific to what the government can control in our operations to feed this, this portion of the comp plan. Next Monday, the meeting is at Chase Street Elementary. It's on land use, and that's from 7 until 8:30. And then the following Monday, the 16th of October, there's a meeting at J.J. Harris, which will be specifically talking about the work program, and that again is from 7 to 8:30. So I hope everybody will get involved and participate. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Entertain a motion for adjournment. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Mr. Herrick, we want to shut you. I want to shut you up, Andy.
I'm sure there were a lot of people liked for me to say nothing. So,
sorry about that.
No comments from the peanut gallery, please. So, on the issue of litter, as Commissioner Gertz mentioned, there is a phone number, 706-613-3506. I have it on speed dial. I call them regularly. They are probably sick of hearing from me. In terms of, for Commissioner Wright, in terms of trash pickup outside the loop, many people generate very little trash, and what they'll do is they'll take it to the landfill, and it's cheaper for them to pay by the bag than it is to have a private hauler. So, and then in terms of the commentary about the Confederate War Memorial, I think it's important. An important discussion to have. My own personal feelings are I don't have any problem with it being moved somewhere else. Where it's currently sitting is the 3rd location that it's sat at since 1872. But I do, as our attorney's office has done some research on the legal environment that we have in which to maneuver, there's one other thing that I would like to get some feedback, and I asked this question because I don't know the answer to it, but several people talked about Oconee Hill Cemetery being a better location. I just, through the powers of the internet, I'm looking up on the history of Oconee Hill Cemetery. So it says it was purchased in 1855 by the city of Athens, and then in 1856 the city formed a self-perpetuating board of trustees to hold and manage in trust the original purchase of 17 acres on the west side of the North Oconee River as a public cemetery for the benefit of the town. and then subsequently later on, some additional 81.8 acres were purchased by the trustees. So my question is, maybe as you're doing some research, presumably if Oconee Hills Cemetery were interested in taking the monument, they could do that voluntarily, but would we have legal authority to remove it and relocate it there without their consent?
Over the years, I've looked pretty carefully at that relationship, and the trustees are an independent body. The mayor and commission don't have any control, or other than the mayor sits on the board ex officio, but there's no, you couldn't force the cemetery to take that monument. It would have to be a voluntary acceptance on the part of the cemetery.
Ms. Bell.
I'll make it short and sweet. 2 weeks ago today and tomorrow, we had 144 guests in Athens that was a part of the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing. And our manager and our mayor came, and Commissioner Dickerson and I were a part of that. We're on the committee representing our commission for this. It has been in operation for 13 years, and it's been wonderful to see the cities that have participated. It's a 3-year program for each city that wants to participate, but it's a wonderful way of each community upgrading their housing to put into affordable housing, also to get rid of blight and do anything to kind of clean up their communities and whatevers. But we had them here for those 3 days, and it was wonderful to see the energy, the love, the caring that we give to so many for so long. And I appreciate our community being the host for that. We took them, or they did, on a tour of the city. We took them to Brookside, which is our project on the Hawthorne. But it was just wonderful to have that many people here, and we appreciate you being the host to that very much. And do I get to make the motion that we adjourn? I will so do.
I think it's about time. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good night, everybody.